elements. So the first one we looked at is the ETS cost. I want to repeat, it's the smallest amount in the energy bill. Here we have already now proposed changes of the Market Stability Reserve. We are stopping the cancellation of allowances. We're boosting the firepower of the reserve, and with this we are enhancing, which is very important, the stability and the predictability of the ETS prices without losing the important price signal. In addition, we will shortly consult Member States on updated ETS benchmarks, using all the flexibilities the legal text gives us, and we are on track to present the full review of the ETS system as announced in July. Then the second part, or the two other cost components, are, as I said, electricity taxes and the grid charges. Here the work is advancing on the legislative proposals with which we will come. And today's discussion has confirmed that we will present these legislative proposals in May. And finally, we discussed, as I called it, the biggest chunk of the energy bill. This is the energy source itself. Here it's very important to recall, if we widen the picture for a moment. As I said, the Strait of Hormuz is essentially closed, and immediately citizens feel the impact. They feel the impact at the gas station, they feel the impact in the supermarket, on the household bills. So what we are seeing in the Middle East is not some distant crisis, but in a world in which everything is connected, the effects are direct and they are immediate. And this is, as I said, the second fossil fuel crisis in just a few years. There's one thing that all these events make clear. We are paying a very high price for our overdependency on fossil fuels. And the grim reality for our continent is fossil fuel energy will remain the most expensive options in the years to come. But on the other hand, we also have assets. Europe has assets. We have the electricity that is produced in Europe from renewables and from nuclear. And therefore, our strategy to decarbonize has not only been confirmed in the last years, but is growing in importance day by day. And our objective is very clear. We need to scale up the homegrown, affordable, reliable energy. This is the wide range of different renewables we have, but it is also, of course, the nuclear, because they give us independence, predictability, and energy security. And the only lasting way out of the fossil dependency is to modernize by shifting electricity generation to renewables and nuclear, and then, of course, by electrifying the economy as rapidly as possible. We have made progress in Europe what growing renewables and nuclear energy is concerned. Just a figure, they both now account for over 70% of our electricity generation, but of course we need to go much further. And these clean energy sources need better integration in the energy system. I think you're all aware of the fact that at the moment huge volumes of clean power remain unused or are even wasted. So what we need is storage, we need flexibility, we need to accelerate the grid connections. And to improve this overall situation, we have presented the grids package in December, as you might recall. The initial goal was to have it agreed with the co-legislators at the end of this year. I think this is too much time. The sense of urgency is too high. So I would really like to urge the co-legislator that we have approved this important package by the beginning of the summer. We also need to accelerate the electrification of our economy, of our industrial operations, of how we heat our homes, of our mobility. In other words, electrifying Europe means making Europe more independent. But at the moment, we're lagging behind with electrification, behind the United States, for example, behind China. So we will present our electrification strategy also before the summer. This will include an ambitious new target on electrification. only what gets measured gets done. And to achieve this, we have to remove remaining regulatory obstacles, and we have to mobilize investment. This is my last point here. Investment. Regarding the public money, I will again encourage the member states to make better use of the EU funding we have, for example, the cohesion funds. The money is there. You can invest it in grids, in storage, in batteries. Please use that money now because we need this improvement of our energy system. But we also know that public money is not enough, so we also need much more private capital. And we will therefore convene an investment conference to mobilize private investment in these areas. So, as you see, there's a lot of work going on to confront the reality and the challenges we face. This was an excellent orientation debate. It will certainly not be the last orientation debate concerning this crisis, but it is a good ramp building up for the next week's communication in preparation of the European Council in Cyprus.
Thank you very much, President. We can take a couple of questions. Jorge.
Hello, is it on? No. Hello. Hello, Jorge Liboreiro with Euronews. I need to ask you, of course, about the events last night in Hungary. Viktor Orban has been defeated after 16 years of uninterrupted power. Peter Magyar, the winner, is promising to restore relations between Brussels and Budapest. What are your expectations for Peter Magyar? Do you expect him, for instance, to carry out the reforms to release the frozen funds? Do you expect him to put an end to the Russian influence inside Hungary? And do you expect him to abide by the agreement on the 90 billion loan for Ukraine without making it conditional on the Druzhba pipeline? Thank you.
So I would like to say that today Europe is Hungarian without any question. The people of Hungary have spoken and they have reclaimed their European path. It is a victory for fundamental freedoms. And I really want to say to the Hungarian people, you've done it again, against all odds, like you did in 1956 when you courageously stood up. Like you did it in 1989, when you were the first to cut the barbed wire that was dividing our continent. So with this result, our union is stronger, our union is more united. It was an exceptional evening yesterday. Of course, we will start working with the government as soon as possible on the topics you mentioned and much more to make a swift and overdue progress to the benefit of the Hungarian people. There's much work to be done as Hungary is coming back to the European path. But I think we should also look at the lessons learned inside the European Union. For example, I think moving to qualified majority voting in foreign policy is an important way to avoid systematic blockages as we've seen in the past. And we should use the momentum now really to move forward on that topic. But today, of course, is a day to celebrate. So I want to recall what I once said in a speech to the Hungarian people. We are one family. Your story is our story. Your future is our future. And we will walk with you every step of the way.
Thank you, President. I see a lot of interest, of course. Marco.
Thank you very much. Marco Brasolini, Italian newspaper La Stampa. I would like to come back to the toolbox that you are preparing for member states to respond to the energy crisis. You mentioned the possibility of relaxing state aid rules, but of course not all the member states they have the same fiscal space because also of the EU fiscal rules. So are you also considering a possible relaxation of fiscal rules as well through, an activation of the general escape clause or allowing member states to activate the national escape clause or maybe through common financing? So do you have, what is your answer to avoid the fragmentation in the response of the member states? Thank you.
Yeah. So it is very important to address the different parts or phases of the crisis step by step. The first most important point now when we're speaking about relief measures is what I already said, that they have to be targeted, temporary and timely. This is very important. Second, you were referring to broader economic interventions. They must be minimal to avoid undue deterioration of the public deficits, without any question. And at the moment being, as we speak, we have to state that the conditions for activating alternative measures, such as the general escape clause or national escape clauses, are, as we speak, currently not met. But of course, we will maintain our vital coordination role with the wider European economic interest in mind. So step by step, we will see how the crisis develops, how the situation in the Middle East develops. As we speak right now, the conditions are not met.
Okay, and we'll take one additional final question. Magnus.
Thank you, Magnus, with DIRECTO. First of all, you mentioned non-fossil fuel energy sources inside Europe. What exactly is the Commission proposing? And then, secondly, if I may ask, and double down on Jorge's good question before, Magyar is now primed to be Prime Minister. How certain are you that he's capable of delivering these reforms, and what exactly does he need to deliver to unfreeze the billions and billions of EU funds currently withheld from Budapest? And then finally, if I may ask, thirdly, we know there's an EU mission to inspect the Druzhba pipeline that has been stalled in Kiev for quite some time now. What are your expectations in the near future on that? Thank you.
So, the first part, the non-fossil fuel energy part, it is indeed the wide range of different renewables that we have. And then nuclear, and here I want to emphasize the new nuclear, we often call them the SMRs, the small modular reactors. I think this is a very promising technology. We should keep in mind that not only the United States and China are heavily investing in that already, but also the UK, South Korea, Japan, and Canada are investing also heavily, so we should be alert and keep track with this very promising technology. The benefits of the small modular reactors are clear. They are, the complexity is lower, thus the costs are lower, and thus the industrial scale-up possibilities through standardized production is better. So there are clear advantages, but of course the biggest advantage is that it can provide the much-needed base load in a perfect combination with renewables. You have the SMRs and you have the renewables. That is the way to go forward. On the second and third part of your question, first of all, the new government has to be in place. That is important. We will be in contact immediately. If you look at the discussions by Peter Magyar and his announcements in the public sphere during the election campaign, you can already see that he's very clear on the European path, that he is very clear also committing himself and the new government to continue working with us on the different topics that are open. For me, it's very important that we work intensively with the new Hungarian government on funds that have to be delivered, reforms that have to be delivered, but funds then that can be delivered because the Hungarian people deserve it. So let him be in office first. I think this is the most important part. But as I said, he was also very clear with his public comments on what he intends to do. Thank you very much.
Thank you, President. We had not a couple, but 5 questions, actually. Thank you, President. And thank you for your participation. Wish you a good afternoon. Thanks.